Number 2 most common oil leak would be the timing cover. In this case, this one is leaking. You can see it's the dark spots. That's where the seepage, that's where it's seeping the oil. It's always the same area over and over. They got some kind of weak spot there, so it's always behind the power steering pump. This is not very common, but I got the leak from the other side, behind on the bottom of the AC compressor. It's kind of hard to see. I can see around the power steering pump, the oil sitting on the bottom, so that's the timing cover. And this other side, it looks like it's a little worse. You can see the oil there sitting on the bottom of the AC compressor. So that's like behind the water pump. That's bolted to the timing cover case. So we're gonna replace the gaskets and apply new sealant. This one, the timing cover sealant is calling for not just regular RTV, but the 3-bond, the Mopar 3-bond. So I highly recommend you guys using the right stuff. The 3-bond is a little thicker and dries faster, and it's designed for that. We're gonna replace the crankshaft seal as well, because we're gonna take the cover out and we're gonna clean it. So I'm not gonna take a chance of keeping the old crankshaft seal in. I'm just gonna put a new one. Alright, so since I have the vehicle up already, I'm gonna start taking these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts off. Now these little 10mm bolts on the timing cover, they come with these sleeves. So make sure you don't lose those rubber sleeves. They either will come out on the bolt like this, or they might stay inside the timing cover. So if you're gonna be cleaning the timing cover, try not to lose them. Yeah, I recommend taking the wheels off, so you can put the car a little lower and have much easier reach everywhere. Because we gotta take the intake manifold off, we gotta take the valve covers off, alternator needs to come off, all the pulleys, belt, and other side valve cover needs to come off. I'm not gonna cover the intake manifold removal. You can see my other video for that. Okay, to remove the right valve cover, I usually take the battery and the battery tray. This whole thing is gonna come off. That way it's gonna be much easier to slide the valve cover off, and the water pipes and all that stuff. So good idea to take a picture where everything is. All these clips, how the harness runs. That way you don't have any issues in the future with wiring rubbing and stuff like that. Okay, we gotta take the fuse box out. Just gotta press on this tab. Last one. There it is. Oh, one got clipped in again. There's a one more clip on the bottom of the fuse box. There. Should have enough room now. Now it's few bolts. So for power steering, reservoir, that one has to come off. Now it's all 10mm long bolts for this box. Was one in the front, that's why we took the power steering reservoir off. This is the second one. Third one is on the fender. Three. Fourth one's on the bottom there. That should be it. Now we got 3 nuts, 10mm as well. Those big ass nuts. And now it should come off. There's one more clip for the evap lines there, and one more clip for the power steering line. Okay, just move that on the side a little bit. So as you can see, it's not that much of a work. This is gonna be way easier because here in the back of the valve cover we got a little like a breather with the 2 torques, and right now it's gonna be super easy to get to it. All right, I'm gonna work on this bracket for the coolant lines. That's 4 nuts there. Okay, this just comes off. I'm gonna disconnect the wire harness. There's a little red tab you gotta slide, and then there are tabs on the gray slider, and it just slides forward, and that disconnects it. Now you should have 2 10mm bolts going to the intake manifold. I gotta slide this hose off, and it should be 2 10mm bolts. Someone was in here, so I got only one. It's a good idea to have a magnetic trace for all the bolts so you don't lose them. Disconnect the wire harness for the variable valve timing. Okay, now yeah, I should drain the coolant, because I'm gonna move these lines, those heater core lines, I'm gonna move them up out of the way. So I'm gonna raise the car a little bit so I can slide my drain pan under the hose. Now I'm gonna get the lower radiator hose, I'm gonna take off, and I'm gonna take this heater hose off, both heater hoses off. But first I'm gonna do the lower radiator hose that goes to the water pump on the bottom. I got these nice clam removal pliers. Sometimes the hose is kind of stuck. I got a nice tool to remove the radiator hose. Yeah, and of course the coolant goes everywhere but the bucket. Okay, now I'm gonna get the upper heater core hose off, or heater hose. Okay, Now the bottom one. Yeah, those hoses can be stubborn sometimes. So now I should have some room to get that bracket. Still the evap line in the way. Okay, brackets off. Now I'll get the ignition coils off. So 10mm for the ignition coils. Yeah, if you got close to 100,000 miles, you better put on spark plugs now. Another wire harness clip on the valve cover. There's gonna be a bunch more here. Sometimes you break them. You can get the alternator off too. So I'm gonna get the wiring off. That should be 13mm. You would think after all these years they would figure out a little easier way for the wiring connectors. These security tabs, just pain in the ass. Now I'll put it on top of the deep stick, and that makes me more room. Alright, now I'm gonna take the intake manifold off. This is basically the same intake manifold as on ProMasters, Caravans, Grand Cherokees. Just some of the brackets are a little different. Alright, now for the alternator, the tensioner is pretty tough. So you want one of the biggest 1/2 inch drive ratchets you can find. Little extension. Put the extension in the hole. And now, okay, I gotta turn clockwise on the tensioner. Slowly but steadily. Till you take the belt off. All right. Now we got a 13 and 15 perhaps. And I put the bolts back into the alternator so I don't lose them. Now we got the alternator bracket that we need to take off. So again, 13 on the bottom, 16, okay, that's the bracket for the alternator with 2 bolts. So on the tensioner that looks like a 13. Get the top first. Now the bottom bolt. And the tensioner comes off. So I'm just gonna get the thermostat bolts and put it on the side. I got the drain pan underneath, but we drained it pretty good, so there's not much fluid in there anymore. So if you got a lot of miles, now is a good time to replace the thermostat too. Yeah, I would say if you have more than 60,000-70,000 miles and you taking these bolts off, just put a new one in there. I've seen them leak right from this little dot here. That's like a weak spot on this plastic where there's like a little steel rod behind the thermostat, and that kind of pushing against this plastic here, and it can leak from here. So just better to replace it once in a while. Okay, I'm gonna get these two little bolts for the bracket. Now we gotta take these idle pulleys for the belt. It's a 13. So one has a long bolt, one has a short bolt. Okay, now we're gonna take the valve covers off. You can take the belt off too. Get it out of the way. I'm gonna inspect it. Yeah, I don't see any cracks. Looks pretty good to me, so we're gonna reuse that. So first take the valve covers off, and then we'll take the power steering pump off. Not the lines, we're just gonna let it hang down. So it's actually 1, 2, and I believe it's 1 on the bottom. So 3 bolts, and the whole pump pushes down. So we got room to take these 10mm bolts on the timing cover. T25 Torx. Just undo a couple threads and okay, slide it off. This is just a safety precaution because I don't want to break anything. I'm gonna do it on the both sides since I already have it in my hand. Now I wish I could show you a little better, but in the back of the right valve cover you can see that this hose, the breather hose, that's like a PCV valve, and it's that PCV valve is mounted with 2 Torx bolts. To get to the top bolt you need to take this elbow, 90-degree elbow off. And for the breather, for the 2 Torx screws, I can't really use this Torx socket because it's too long. There's not much room there. So I'm using just a small bit socket with this ratcheting wrench. It's really nice, really handy for these tight to reach places. This is the bit socket. You got most of the bits I need. I will probably break my arms trying to get those 2 bolts off with the battery installed. So this is one of those bolts from the top. Now I'm gonna move this evap tube to the top and slide my hands from the bottom. I mean, one from the bottom, one from the top, and you can't really see anything, so you just gotta go by touch. Okay, I got it in. I loosed it. Now I can do it by hand. PC valve comes off. There, I get it from the bottom. And this is it. Don't forget about the gasket there. Okay, and the reason for it, this needs to come off, is because the end of the camshaft actually goes inside, so you wouldn't be able to get the valve cover off. Alright, now I'm gonna take the camshaft sensor. That's a T30. Alright, normally the bolt comes off, but in this case the bolt's coming off together with the sensor. No big deal. It's the O-ring that holds it in there. Okay. So that's the camshaft sensor. Like this, it should come off. Now it's gonna be a little easier to install it back in when the bolt is like this. Alright, now I can move on to all these 8mm bolts. Some of them are studded, so try to keep them in place so you know where the studded ones go. Okay, the rest I'm gonna have to do with the ratchet. Like this, swivel, 8mm, long extension. Gotta lift the valve cover up, which most of the time it's not an easy task because the valve cover gets it's like stuck to the cylinder head. So what I found to work pretty good most of the time is on these little points I lift with my pry bar. I just gotta make sure I don't, like I use the bolt, not the fuel rail, because I don't want to break the fuel rail or the injector. So I'm gonna use the bolt and slowly lift up. Let's try a different side. Oh wow, that is seized in pretty good. Yeah, I got all the bolts off. It's just the valve cover is seized on the gasket and the guide pins. These valve covers, the older version, have metal guide pins. Really dumb idea. Yeah, it's about to break too. Wish they would make some. Oh, here we go. There we go. Now I got it loose. So I'm gonna stick a screwdriver there and try pry from the other side. There, all corners are free. Yep, good. Now I gotta position this tube and the wire harness so it's not in the way. Okay, where is it hanging now? EVAP tube, that's in the way. Transmission dipstick, bent a little bit. Oh. More upwards. Okay, and the valve cover's off. But these valve cover gaskets are pretty good. We don't see them leaking pretty much at all. They last pretty long time. But as you can see, it's not a super easy job. So just for peace of mind, I will throw a new valve cover gasket there. I always clean the surface areas where the gasket or seal goes to. Just be careful not to put the debris inside the engine. Now this left side is a little easier because we don't have the PCV valve in the back of the valve cover. So that bracket, we need to lose the bottom 13mm bolts, the studded bolts. We need to lose them so we can move this bracket towards here, so we got room working on the valve cover. So I'm using a ratcheting long wrench, 13mm. I don't need to remove it completely, just a few threads, just enough so I got the room to take the 8mm bolts for the valve cover. Oh, making it tighter. No. Alright, that should be good. Now I got plenty of room here. Ignition coils, cam sensor, and then all the bolts all around. Alright, now to the power steering pump. It's a 13mm. One's a little bit in the angle, like the top ones. Alright, that's the last one. Okay. Power steering just hang down. And I got enough room for all these bolts. And it comes with the rubber bushing. 4, 5, 6. Oh, I gotta take this plate. Okay. On other cars, I think caravans, they have a tensioner in here. So for Wrangler, they just put a plate here and they put the tensioner in different place. Oh, it's a 15 mil. No, 16. Oh, 16. Now I can get to it. Sometimes the bushing stays in the timing cover, so just be careful not to lose it. One. Yeah, like this one. This one came out without the rubber bushing. There's another one. Another one. Another one. I still got a couple more. Let's see, yeah, two more. Just a little hard to see. Alright, now I'm not sure if you can see it, but this bolt has a washer. This bolt has a thin kind of like washer, but it's not separate from the bolt. This washer is separate from the bolt and it's a little thicker, so this one's gonna stay there. We're just gonna go for these thin ones, so it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one we can leave, this one's gonna come off. Yeah, it's best if you use a service manual. It shows on the picture which bolts to take off and which one you can leave in, because the water pump will stay on with the timing cover. We don't have to take the water pump out. I mean, you can, but this is a warranty, and the warranty doesn't pay for things that are not broken. So basically all the long bolts. And there's one more on the bottom here. Yep. And that should be all. All these bolts, they're gonna stay in. Okay. Now I gotta take the crankshaft pulley off. Yep. 27mm. I might just be able to, yeah. Let's see if I can lose it. No, unfortunately, I gotta get that tool. So this is the tool to hold the crankshaft while you're loosening up the bolt. You need a 1/2 inch breaker bar. Let's see if I can lose it with my torque wrench. Oh wow, that's pretty tight. I'm gonna try a little different approach. Okay, now this should hold against the frame, and we'll see what happens. And that seemed to work. Can't believe this one was so tight. That's the bolt. Now this should just slide up easily. Now over here there's the one prying point for the cover, like so. That's one. There should be another one over here, at least somewhere. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pry here, and I'm gonna slide my screwdriver here when it opens up, like so. I know there's one more prying point down on the side here. It's just not very easy to reach. So now it's just glued on the bottom. If I could get the pry bar on the bottom, then it would be good. But it's easier said than done. There's nothing to pry against. I could try lift the vehicle up and pry from the bottom, I guess. So there is actually a small area where I can pry. Okay, it moves a little. There we go. Nice, it works. Alright, good. And the cover's off. Just holds on the silicone. There we go. Now the tedious job, I gotta clean all the old silicone or 3-bond. See over here, I gotta get a blade and clean it real good. I don't want to leave anything old back on. I don't want it to compromise the new seal. Clean all this off. On the oil pan, clean that. There's no gasket, it's all the RTV. The only gasket is right over here in the center of the timing cover. The outsides, where it always leaks, is the silicone. And there's a little gasket in here and a little O-ring over here. So I'm gonna clean everything from oil. I'm gonna clean this area where it was leaking and this area where it was leaking. But the better you clean it, the better it's gonna seal. Alright, I got the new gasket. There's 1, 2 and a little O-ring here. I replaced the new crank seal. Now I'm gonna put the 3-bond silicone RTV. I'm gonna go on the inside of the holes. If you follow the service procedure, they tell you to put silicone in all these places. I'm just making sure I got everything covered. And of course here for the oil pan. Okay, now where the cylinder head meets the block, put a little dab of the silicone. Clean the oil, but sometimes it just stays in little crooks. Put silicone in the corners there. And because the silicone will be sliding out, I'm just gonna put a little bit here. On here for the tensioner. For some reason they putting a lot of silicone there. So I think we're good. I got carefully power steering is in the way a little bit. Now I gotta see where these rubber bushings are. I want to put 2 of them in there. Yeah, you only have about I don't know, 10-15 minutes before the silicone starts to dry out, so now is not the good time to go get your coffee. Yeah, I always use torque wrench on these bolts. This little gun is not too strong. And all these 10mm bolts should be torqued to 12 Newton meters. 12. And for these oil pan bolts, it's 18 foot-pounds of torque. I can put the hose back in so it doesn't drip on my head. Alright, now is a good time to put the crank pulley back in. Just gotta find the key. There we go. These hose clamp pliers make it a little easier. Okay, this is vibration damper or crank pulley. It's a 2-step procedure. So first step is 30 foot-pounds. I'm gonna use my big torque wrench. Alright, so 30 foot-pounds. Just like this. Not too much. Second step would be 105 degrees. So they don't give you pounds but degrees, so you need a degree wrench. That's 34 degrees. Oh boy, but I have to... Okay. That's 77 degrees. 82 degrees. Just I don't have enough strength. Here. Oh, 96 degrees. It's kind of not easy to hold. Okay, that's it. 105 degrees. So that gives us roughly 198 foot-pounds. So this is the one with the short bolt goes on the left. The long bolt goes on the right here. Yeah, if you spin them and they make noise, you better replace them so you don't have any issues in the future. Okay, now the tensioner. One end goes here, the other end, let's see, yeah, that's the way. Although I should put the belt through, because then it's gonna be hard to put the belt through. So I'm gonna get the belt and the bracket for the alternator. Okay, yeah, I gotta put the belt in first. So that's gonna go around the water pump to the AC. Then for the alternator here on top. This is gonna go around the tensioner. So I'm gonna take this off so it's so easier to install. It's gonna go down. Oh yeah, I gotta mount the power steering pump. That's gonna go for the power steering pump. And this is gonna go up this way for the alternator. So that's kind of how it's gonna go, kind of like this. But I want to first mount the power steering pump, but I can at least mount this tensioner. Now I have the belt situated. Okay, I got one started. The bottom one is hard to reach, so I use my socket as an extension. Okay, now for the bracket, and we're in good shape.